Pat, welcome back to the podcast. It's an absolute honor and a thrill for me to bring you back here for the second time. It's been a while. I don't know when the exact date was, maybe mid-December since our first December 2020, our first episode. So
Awesome.
I'm really grateful you're back here.
Yeah, man. It's good to be here. It's been a while. I'm excited to hear what's going on with you too, because we haven't caught up in a while.
Yeah, man. Well, I think an appropriate place to start is just your seems like almost like a love-hate relationship you have with Twitter. It's like one day you're following zero people, the next you're like, oh, I'm actually in on this, and the next you're like, this is dumb. So like, what's your current state of the union on Twitter?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. You asked that. I think it goes back to I'm still learning how to be an entrepreneur, and I don't know if that makes sense, but one of the things for me that's always been, kind of tough. I think a lot of people experience this, but maybe don't talk about it as much. But like comparison to others, comparing yourself to others, comparison is the thief of joy, right? All that. I think a lot of that, the reasons why I don't like Twitter is like the feelings that I have when I go on there and I see, someone's further ahead in their journey than I am, or, someone is having more success, or, you're only seeing someone's highlights. But I think I've been thinking about this actually recently is like, I'm getting better. I'm only a few years into this whole, building a business or building being a creator or whatever. And I'm getting better at handling that. And what I'm realizing is that it was way worse in the beginning years of like, I don't want to follow anyone. I don't want to see anything. And it's hard for me to like celebrate other success sometimes, like internally, even though I might, congratulate them, but whatever. I feel like I'm getting better at that now. So lately I've really actually been enjoying Twitter and not caring so much about, who follows me and all that like stupid stuff that, I'm sure we all think about, but never talk about.
How have you gotten better at it? Is there any particular practice you've done or a thought pattern or a practice you could recommend to get better at having more self-awareness or better able to handle the success of others?
Yeah, I think I don't really have anything I've done from a, intentional perspective. But one thing that I know that works really well is like if there is someone that, has that moment where they're really successful and you see it on Twitter or you see it on LinkedIn or you see it wherever, it's easy to just look at it and then move on and then keep thinking about it. But one really good tactic or thing that I try to do is actually like reach out to that person personally and congratulate them on that thing and maybe start a conversation because you probably know them or maybe you don't, doesn't matter. Instead of just liking it or moving on to send them a message or congratulate them personally, and then that builds like a human connection. Like if you see someone, if you were just talking to them, it would be fine. You wouldn't like. I think it's that weird like behind the screen thing where it's hard to like feel happy for someone because it's like behind this just digital screen like. But if you talk to them and have a conversation, maybe you'll understand more of the real story behind it, or you'll see that there's just, another human just like you who's, had that success. So that would be that's my dog.
I've heard of the dog on previous podcasts that I listened to research for this one.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It was great. No, nothing to apologize. That's real life.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I agree 1000%. I think that having these conversations has made people on the screen much more human. We're talking face to face. You're not just one of my favorite, if not my favorite blogger that I read. Like you're an actual human being, which is amazing. And like it's like, oh, this guy has struggles and is going through things, and it's really helpful from that perspective to really internalize and make someone else a human, just talking to someone, which we sometimes lose.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, exactly. I think, that just reminds me of like when I haven't talked to you in like over a year, and I've seen your tweets, and then I kind of lost that connection because we didn't really talk much. But now that I'm talking to you face to face, it's all love. It's like it's worth
Exactly.
it. Right?
Yeah. So I brought up the blog, and I'm curious. You recently said, "All right, I'm going to start daily blogging again." What went into the decision to start that? Because, bro, I love your blog, and it's such a joy for me to read. It feels like a smarter, better writer version of me is writing, and so because of that, I just feel like, oh, like I love reading it. It's just so authentic, so real, and I'm sure you get that all the time. And so when you stop blogging, I obviously don't check your website every day, but when you do blog, I check every day. And so,
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
man, talk to me about like the decision to start again.
Yeah, no, I think I got a comment like that from someone else that said that he sent me an email after I wrote or no, I think I just tweeted something randomly and it was totally out of context, and the guy said, "I really miss your daily blog," and I really like took that to heart, and I was like, all right, well, because I actually usually write every day, like in the mornings, but often it's like in my journal or something like that. And I kind of stopped doing the daily blogging last year. And honestly, I can't remember exactly why I stopped doing it. Life, just, I
Yeah.
guess. Um, it was like a slow burn, I think, of why, maybe I stopped doing it. I was doing it a couple times a week, and then it just kind of slowly died out. Um, so it actually was inspired by someone like kind of what you said is that you really enjoyed it. So it's only been 3 days though, so I don't want to. I probably sound like a total maniac to your listeners.
In what way?
uh, Not blogging and then blogging again, and like someone who can't figure out what they want to do.
I think that is indicative of a lot of us. And we start habits that are good for us and we enjoy, and then for whatever reason we stop doing it. And it's very refreshing to hear a writer of your caliber being like, I stopped doing it, I'm back doing it now. And it lets me know like you can stop doing something at one point, even if you're good at it, and continue doing it another time, and you can just go at your own pace. And that's kind of what I've admired most about your journey, is it really seems from the outside that you're just going at your own pace. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, yeah. I think I, I wish I was able to do it every day for 5 years. I was just thinking about, I used to wake up early a lot last year. I was waking up at like 5 or 6 a.m. And then over the past couple of months, I've been sleeping in till 8 or 9. And I've kind of just been, at first I was kind of like, okay, I got to get back to waking up early. I got to get back to waking up early. And then I had a moment where I'm like, I'm doing this for a reason. I really enjoy getting my sleep, and that's something that I'm working on this year and recently is like, doing things at my own pace, doing things my own way. You don't need to see, some YouTuber productivity person who says they do their morning routine this way or that way, or someone who built their business this way, or they reached this revenue, or this many podcast downloads in this short amount of time. You don't also have to. What I'm realizing is that I don't have to reach those same milestones or do those things. And I think it's almost like cooler to do things my way. Or like, I think when you look back and if you did things your way, I'll be happier.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like from doing research for this episode and just knowing you, it's like there's a very critical voice in your head that I don't know if it's bigger in you or you just are more open to talking about it. Why do you think that negative voice is loud in your head?
Hold on one sec.
Take
Can
your
you pause
time.
it for a sec?
Exactly.
So, as you're asking about the critical voice in my head, seems like it's something that you see that you don't see in other like online Twitter or other people online. Is that right?
It's not so much that I don't see it. It's that you are open to talking about it and you talk about it often.
Yeah.
And And so because of that, it maybe feels louder from my perspective. I don't know if it actually is.
Yeah.
But you're very much willing to be like, listen, I have this negative voice. This is what's happening. Like, I'll beat myself up over this. And like, I'm actually getting better now. But like,
Yeah.
it's definitely a common theme I've noticed at least.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's just who I am. I think maybe the daily blog helps with, because oftentimes I don't, it's just that the highs and lows, some days you just have bad days and, or, bad parts of your days. And sometimes since I write every day, it would just sometimes come out that's what's top of mind. But yeah, I think that's also just kind of my personality. It's like, it's self-critical. What's the word where you make fun of yourself?
Self-deprecating
kind of. But I don't know. I mean, do you have that critical voice?
Yeah, I mean, I have had it in the past, but there are periods where I've noticed it a lot less.
Yeah.
And there are periods when there's like very little, if any, critical voice. And I'm in one of those periods right now and I can attribute what exactly happened to make that the case.
What was it?
This is a practice that I've talked about a bunch on this podcast, which is just writing I love myself 100 times every day. And I've done that now for something like 40 straight days or 50 straight days. I'm not sure. And dude, the negative self-talk I used to have about myself, about my progress, about things that would happen is not gone. But when it happens, I'm more easily and more willing to forgive myself. And it happens much quicker. And so it's incredible. And I know that like, wow, like when I make a mistake, the first thing that I say to myself after I make that mistake is I love myself. It's all good. Like it was supposed to happen this way. And so I don't know, maybe that's something to try. Maybe it's something
you write it every day on like just one time or multiple times on a piece of paper.
100 times every day. So if you're watching now, you could see it's like usually 3 columns or 4 columns, and it's like nonstop. And it seems crazy. And I would have never, like, if you told me I was doing this 5 years ago, I'd be like, what is wrong with you, this person? But I know it works. And so I'm not trying to question it. You know what I mean?
I think self-talk is so important.
Yeah.
Especially in tennis. I just watched this one video where this guy talks about like, well, when you're playing tennis, you can't be technically like, you don't talk to anyone. It's very lonely, especially if you're playing singles. So you're in your head a lot. And I remember watching this video where this guy talked about like this having positive self-talk while you're in a match. Even if you miss a shot, as long as you had the intention to hit the shot the right way and you hit your shot well, you didn't hit it, like weak or like you didn't play scared. You played strong. And even if it goes out, if it goes long, you still congratulate yourself after that shot and say, that was the right shot. I did it. That was the best I could do. And that kind of positive self-talk he attributed to, he wasn't like a pro. He was a 40 and over pro. Like he was a national 40 and over ranked guy. And he said, once he did that, he went number 1. Wow. So I think while just, in the match or while you're doing anything, the self-talk really does work. And I'm going to try your method. I think it's really, really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me know how it works. And also on that topic of self-talk or visualization, I know we spoke a lot about visualization in our last episode. I even titled it The Power of Visualization, our last episode. Yeah. But one thing I'm not sure we talked about is Lanny Bassham. Does that name sound familiar at all to you?
No.
And I think he wrote this book called With Winning in Mind. If I'm not mistaken, that's the name of the title. And he was a professional rifle shooter. Yeah. And he was an Olympic champion, and he taught his son to be an Olympic champion as well, using this method. And one of the things that he would do is whenever he shot a rifle, it was the moment before he would imagine a perfect shot.
Yeah.
And the moment after he would imagine a perfect shot. So even if the shot wasn't perfect, he had done 2 out of 3 perfect shots in his mind.
Right.
So I thought that was a fascinating
Like,
example, and it made me think of when you're talking about the tennis example.
yeah, no, that's exactly what this guy says too. It's like when you're going to go up to serve. I never thought about the after, but the before is just imagine, just visualize yourself hitting it how you want to hit it. You know how you want to hit it, but maybe you're not visualizing exactly how that's gonna feel or look when you do it. And just doing that before is a great tactic. And I guess it works in all parts of life, right?
Yeah. So were you always, some of these concepts that we're talking about is like visualization, writing I love myself, like affirmations. Like, were you always open to concepts like that? Or has it slowly developed as you've gotten older of like, oh, this works? Because obviously the example of you writing, I want to get out of debt basically, and then doing it. And
Yeah.
that's the crazy story, which I think we went into last time. But it's like, when did you say, oh, like this actually works? Or I don't know why this works, but it does. Like, what was that evolution like for you?
I mean, it's definitely not how I grew up or how my family is. I think that's like really interesting how now that you asked it, like how I tried that and eventually, I mean, it was later in life when I eventually, basically I had a piece of paper that I put on my wall that said, I'm going to get out of debt. I'm going to have this certain amount of net worth and I'm going to do it by this date. But I think like, now I think about what got me to actually do that and like how I started believing in visualization. I'm still not a big visualization guy. I think there's way more crazy people out there that are doing like, I love myself. That's great. I love that. But I think it was like, I learned that stuff just from reading books and like just being an internet kid. Like,
Yeah.
I think maybe just, starting out on Reddit and then maybe that found some book and then starting a business and then, just kind of branching out. And then finally I read this book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which I'm sure everyone knows about. And then that's what got me to try the visualization technique. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it, but I was never, my family was never like that. That wasn't really like the culture that I grew up in. It was, and I'm definitely, even just my friends circles and maybe a little bit in high school, and college, it was not really like that. So I kind of found that on my own journey, which, I wish, it would be cool if, I think if when I have kids, at least I'll try to, instill some of those kinds of, principles. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that I'm definitely going to teach my kids, the importance of how you talk to yourself, the importance of visualization. And it's definitely not something we have a class in school, but is definitely something I wish I learned or at least was open to applying. But you mentioned being an internet kid, and that's kind of how I would describe myself too. But do you think that like everyone from our generation or everyone who was born in the 90s, like would describe themselves that way? Like what do you think made you in particular an internet kid, and what did the internet give you at a young age?
Yeah, no, I don't think that. I mean, a lot of people might call themselves internet kids. When I say internet kid, I mean like I was antisocial and I would go on Reddit and forums and like internet humor, I guess, like memes before everyone knows what memes were. Like me, I was like into that kind of stuff. And yeah, I don't know. I can even think of a lot of my friends or like traditional friends, like people I went to college with and people I were in high school with. They weren't like they weren't as deep in the internet hole as I was. And I think that was more just like my own curiosity to just go on the internet and like go into holes and find books like Think and Grow Rich that, were written in like the 1920s and just, try different things. That's what I mean by that. But I'm sure you were the same way if you're.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like I was starting blogs and stuff, and I
Yeah,
was like, 13 years old or 10 on forums, like all this stuff. So I strongly relate to it, and it feels like almost like I don't know if it's self-fulfilling, but like it feels almost like it was part of my destiny to create a podcast like this. Or does it feel the same way for you and your website? Like, oh, like this makes sense that I would be interviewing entrepreneurs when like look, this is what I was doing as a young
yeah,
kid. I just didn't realize it.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I was actually when I was like 14, I figured out a way to make money online, which was through these like referral programs. It was called free stuff, anything for free.com or something like that. It was like an old referral scheme where a lot doesn't matter the story, but I figured out one summer when I was 14 how to make like, and I made like a few $1,000s just by like hacking around on the internet. And
Wow.
then I remember I started like another website that like taught people how to do that. And this is before I entered, I think, the ninth or 10th grade. And then life happens, and then you just kind of forget about it, and you become, you like start liking girls and, just high school stuff.
Yep.
And go to college, do traditional route in college like I did. And then, you kind of forget about that. But then it's funny how it comes full circle is like when I'm, maybe 15 or 20 years later, I'm creating a website that is just like that. It's like a blog or a
Wow.
website or whatever. So it was definitely my destiny, I guess. Yeah. But
I no, I have chills right now because what you're describing is so similar to my own story, and
oh
I'm
yeah.
curious if you like were you thinking when you were in ninth grade, when you were in 10th grade, like this is weird? Because what happened to me was I kind of said to myself, like, I don't know if I should do this. Like, this is, I got some hate from people online, like older parents saying you should be playing in school, not starting a blog. And I
Yeah.
really let it get to my head.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there was any bit of that from your perspective as well.
Yeah. I didn't even tell anyone. It took a while to tell my parents, and then I got in a lot of trouble because I was technically in one of the schemes that I was doing was almost like borderline illegal.
Oh, really?
And, and I think, okay, I remember I bought to like prove that it was real money. I basically like went and just bought like an Xbox and a TV screen. And I was like, Dad, I promise you this is real. Um, and then definitely never told any of the kids at school because I would just like, it's hard even today to explain what we do, right? That we
Mm.
run podcasts or websites, and back then it wasn't even explainable. So, yeah, I was scared I was going to get in trouble, I think, and yeah, yeah. Is that how you
Was
felt?
it, yeah, was it, do you think it was like society's programming that was like, I need to conform to the system from your perspective?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. It's hard to remember back then. I
Yeah.
remember like, yeah, I remember like when I stopped doing it because it was like not something I could even like share with people. Like I couldn't like, when you're in high school, you wanted to like, just fit in. And
Yeah.
this is like, I definitely am not like concerned with like fitting in anymore. But in high school, uh, I really wanted, especially when you become that age of like 15 and 16, I was like, I remember I created like a successful website that had like I basically created like a forum, and it was like pretty popular. People were like commenting, and then I just ghosted it because I was just
Wow.
like almost like ashamed. I wasn't like ashamed of it, but uh, I don't know. It didn't fit the narrative of high school, which is just like drinking and talking to girls and doing all that stuff. And yeah, it wasn't something that anyone would want to hear about or would be impressed by. I don't know.
Yeah. What do you think contributed most to your evolution back to yourself? That's how I look at the journey of like this is how I would describe it myself is like I had myself, I was having a time management blog and like talking about how to become a happier person. I had a Knicks blog. Like these were all cool to me, and these were all like authentic to me. But I kind of let it go because I wanted to fit into society.
Yep.
But I found my way back to myself with this podcast.
Yeah.
How did you find your way back to yourself, and what were there any particular milestones or practices that you did to help you do that?
It took a really long time. So I went to college, and then that was when I was 18, and I was just trying to figure out, I was just trying to fit in again. I was just doing like, what's your major? Oh, I guess it'll be English, and I guess I feel like I was kind of good at writing, so maybe I'll do an English major and I'll be a lawyer. And then graduated from college, and I worked in accounting job. That was my major. And then I switched to, and it was like a really for me, it was a really slow process, which I think is kind of interesting. But I went into accounting, and I wanted to I knew that I always wanted to start something and create something, but I didn't, and this is going back to maybe our first conversation about being critical, is like, I didn't feel that I had the capabilities to do that. Like my website that I built, I didn't like think of that as like, a startup or a company or, anything that could be, a career. So sorry, lost my train of thought there. Oh yeah, sorry. So I didn't think that I was, capable of being an entrepreneur or building anything, because I didn't really know any entrepreneurs growing up, and just the conventional wisdom said to say, go to college, find a career, and start working a job. It's what everyone else does. Yeah. So it took me going through all of college and then trying multiple different careers and being unhappy for even 6 years after school, and then finally figuring out how to get back to being, as you said, get back to being myself. It took a lot of failure and other things that I realized that I didn't want to do. And that meant switching careers 3 different times and, trying a lot of things and failing. So for me, it was time. I don't know.
Were there any particular people who gave you permission to be that person?
Yeah, that's a great question. My parents always gave me permission to do that, to do whatever I wanted to do. So there was never a problem there. And man, I really have to just go back to the internet and seeing what's possible. That was the website Indie Hackers, and just a lot of content on YouTube and Twitter and that sort of thing, just seeing what's possible, and people actually sharing their stories about how much money they're making and how they built a business and actually how they're doing things just to build it. That's why I love the internet, and I love Reddit too, is a good example of people firsthand sharing their experiences and their stories, and being able to see that something is possible, and that just any other ordinary person can do it. That's what inspired me to finally realize that I could do it myself, I guess. So I can't point to any specific person. There are definitely some people that come to mind that were little, I guess, pebbles along the journey. But yeah, I think just the internet was really again, going back to that is just so powerful like that,
It's funny because Starter Story likely has acted as that resource that people can turn to and say, look, it's possible. Look, I'm not crazy. Look, this is giving me permission to be who I want to be. And I'm sure you've gotten many messages like that explaining. So how does it feel to be on the other side of it, where you're actually now giving people the permission when at one point you were looking for the permission of finding yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the best part. If I ever get an email from someone saying that, that one of our stories inspired them. It's sometimes a little bit more detached nowadays. I remember when I first started the site, I was, managing the whole inbox and everything and seeing everyone's, now that I'm a little like further away from that, like I see it less. So like I'm trying it is really nice when I see those things randomly. Um, but I mean, it's just, I think it's hard to even grasp that concept that you know, change someone's life, and you didn't directly fully change their life, but maybe you are like just one little, you know, you gave them the inspiration to make one decision that eventually changed their life. And there are people like that in my life too, that I'll be like forever grateful for. I don't know. I'm sure you experienced that with the podcast too, right?
Yeah, of course. And it always humbles me, you know, that it's like this impacted somebody on a deep enough level to send me a message or to explain what they did as a result of listening to an episode. It's an incredible feeling for sure. In your answer there, you just mentioned something about detachment, about how you're more detached today from Starter Story than you were in the past. How does that impact your work and the feeling of meaningfulness of the work being more detached?
I think it's just different. I mean, in the same way that you could inspire like a reader to, start their own business, someone who reads your site, is also a way that you can inspire your employees or the people that work for you. I think even being an employee myself, I was inspired to, you know, that was like a part of my journey that led me to where I am today. And hopefully my employees or people that work for Starter Story can stay the same, where, they learned, they didn't build the business, but they learned like certain aspects of the business that inspired them to believe that they could do it themselves one day. Or, people that review or edit our content will be, gaining skills and also the knowledge of one day being able to build their own business. So I think that's like, I guess, the justification or being detached is, essentially helping others. It's like delegating to others to be able to go through the same learnings that you went through, because if you're going through the same learnings over and over, then it's kind of useless, right? If you, for example, some of the busy work that I've done over and over for Starter Story, if I kept doing that myself, it'd be kind of pointless. So to be able to give other people those learnings and help them grow, and then finding other people who want to work on those things, I think that's something that I think about. And it's interesting because you see a lot of businesses that are just one person, or just running a solo business. And I think like it's not talked about enough, but one of the really cool things that I think is cool is to be able to bring someone into your business and have them learn. If it's the type of person that enjoys a challenge or learning, that is more wholesome, I think, than just doing it all yourself. That's something I think about sometimes.
Yeah. That's very interesting to think about. I don't know. I'll have to think on that. On the topic of detachment too, we're talking about detachment from the business, but you recently wrote a post about detachment from listening to music, how you were detached from your former self almost by listening to the music. I thought that was so fascinating, man. I never thought about music from that perspective. And that's why I love your blog so much, because it might be like an obvious insight to you just about your life. But to me, I was like, wow, I never thought about that. And I'm going to listen to old music and see if that's true, and have that in my mind as a potential mental model or idea to think about. But yeah. Well, what was that all about?
I think, it was, I recently realized that I don't really listen to music while I work anymore. Like I don't even think about, like, I used to be the kind of person that has to just like put on a playlist to be able to get anything done. And then I don't know what happened. Didn't happen right away, but slowly I just stopped doing that. And then I started realizing that I don't really like seek out new music. I used to be obsessed with hip hop music, and like I would follow like every new release. I go to like lots of concerts, and over the years I stopped I stopped following it as much. And I looked it up online. It's like, why, and because you see like, your dad or whatever, he doesn't he listens to the same rock and roll. He doesn't get into new music. And I was wondering, like, why is that? Like, why don't we constantly seek out new music, or why do we stick to the old music? And I don't remember where I found it, but somewhere online said that it kind of has something to do with identity, and how as we're like teens and in our 20s, we listen to certain music because it's part of our identity, and maybe like our other friends listen to this music, and it's like a shared bond. But as we get older, our identities are less about how people see us and more about how we see the world, or how, our families are more like, maybe it's more about family than it is about friends and that sort of thing. So as we get a better sense of our identities, I think that music becomes, I guess, less important. And I don't know, like the other comments in there said that I might be suffering from depression because I'm not looking at new music. So it could be that one, but
what came to mind for me, which I didn't see you mention in the blog post, was about a study I think that was done where they showed that the music that you like the most and the time when music is most impactful to you is around the age, I believe, of 12 or 13 years old. Is like when the time in your brain where you're most excited by music, and the music that you listen to will carry over for the rest of your life of that time. And if you look at the people in your life, it's like, ask like, what was the music you listened to as a early teenager? And it's usually the type of music they still listen to many years later. So
yeah, no. I think it's weird. I think, I don't know.
Yeah. Just an interesting insight about music. One other thing I wanted to talk to you about was the Think Week you did. And you've spoken about it on a bunch of different podcasts. I don't know if we spoke about the Think Week that I did, which led to me starting this podcast.
I don't think we talked about that, no.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't similar to yours in that you went and drove around the West Coast and stayed at different Marriotts, which is super cool. So I want to learn more about that because mine was just in one location. But yeah, take us through what you did exactly.
Okay, so I was, at the time, it was right after COVID, I think, and I was running two different businesses because I used to think that I was capable of, because I had some success with my business starter story. I never thought that was going to be like my main business. So I went and started another business, and I was running two businesses at the same time. It was like a SaaS product. And I think I was pretty burnt out and decided to take a Think Week, just because, I just was like, it was like post-COVID. I was pretty burnt out. So I just started driving around the United States. And I just turned off all my email, and I turned off, everything. And I just went in the car and started listening to audiobooks and podcasts and tried to totally disconnect. And over the course of like 10 days, I realized that I shouldn't be working on two different businesses. I should go all in on this original business idea that I never thought was going to be a serious business. And I had that revelation over the course of those 10 days. And I remember, like, I don't know, maybe you can talk more about your Think Week, but in like the first day of the Think Week, my brain was still like monkey brain or lizard brain, where I was just like thinking about, oh, I need to get this done, and I can make it work if I do this and this and this and this. And then the second day was like kind of like a little bit more chilled out, but like still thinking like, okay, well, if I make these long-term decisions and these long-term decisions, I can make it work. And then the third day was like, oh wait, what if I don't work on two businesses and then just work on one business? And then maybe the fourth or fifth day, I was like so sure in my head that I needed to sell that other business or just stop working on the other business and go all in on this new business. And I think, barring all the details, I think the most interesting thing is that it took 4 days of thinking to get there. And I don't know if I would have came to that conclusion, or maybe it would have taken a really long time if I didn't take that week off.
Dude, holy smokes. So are we living the same life? Because I swear you can go on the Twitter, my Twitter, and look at mine, and I break down the 5 days. And I'm like, first 2 days, it was awful. Like I didn't have a place. I was checking for notifications and I couldn't, like, my mind was expecting. Third day, a little better, and fourth and fifth, incredible clarity on what I needed to do next. And I
Clarity,
went home.
that's the word.
Yeah, and I went home at like day 6. And so very, very similar experience. And do you have any insight on why, like, what do you think is the reason for like that 5-day structure of, like, you know, first 2 days, first 48 hours, checking notifications, and the last 2 being like where you have some sense of what you're supposed to do?
I don't know. I mean, I just think going back to the most interesting thing is like how sure in the clarity I was that that was the right decision. And I think that like it reminds me why I need to take another think week again just to see what kind of clarity that can come out of it. But it's really hard to have. I think nowadays we work so fast. We have so much information coming at us, new emails all day, new podcasts to listen to. We never take a moment to just sit there. But that clarity is like, I can't, and I'm sure you had the same feeling as well. That clarity was like, it's kind of going back to the self-talk. It was like, I was so sure that that was the right decision.
Yes.
And that was the right move that like, it didn't like, usually I thought it would feel like hard to, stop working on, to make a decision like that. Like it would be like, almost like ripping a limb off. It was like my second business. It was my baby. Yeah. And that was why I was so scared to stop working on it. But for some reason, those 5 days of just thinking about it made the decision. Like I didn't even care. I was like, this is what I'm doing. And like, I literally stopped caring. Like, when you create something like your podcast or stuff, it's like your baby, right? Like if, you attach your happiness and your sadness to the success of it, something good happens and you're over the moon, something bad happens and you just feel terrible, which is something that we all need to work on. But that clarity made me like completely detach my my decision or my happiness from that other project I was working on. And like from that point, I literally stopped caring about it, which I think it was like, looking back, it's just so weird to think about how it was so black and white after those 5 days. So
I think also another thing that happened for me, at least, was I had so much optimism on day 4 and 5. Like, oh, I know exactly what I need to do. I'm so excited to execute this. Like, okay, I got these 100 people I want to reach out to. And like, I got to find that notebook to like look at how many are actually checked off. Like I knew, and I was so excited. And I remember tweeting like, I wish everyone experienced that level of optimism once in their life. And that optimism, I think, came from the clarity. And so my question right now is like, I feel very optimistic. I feel like I'm doing exactly what I need to do in this moment. And my momentum has probably never been stronger than in this moment.
Yeah.
Like, should I take another?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I don't know, because I've only done one. So I'm gonna have to report back if I should do another one, but I still don't feel like I reached that point of like burnt out that I was when I decided. Were you burnt out when you decided to take it, or was it random?
It wasn't random. I was in a period of deep looking at myself. So in May, I started doing, May of 2020, I started doing 60 minutes of meditation every day. So I did that May, June, July, and August came around, and I was like, okay, like I can do 60 minutes in the morning and at night and no distractions. And so it was just and I brought like 4 or 5 books, but it was like I was building up towards it, is kind of how I would look back and say that's how it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think, man, I think the momentum is like definitely like something I also experienced. Like I just remember after that Think Week, I was so I was just so it wasn't even just the clarity, but it was the energy that I had.
Yes.
And I remember like I we actually doubled our revenue in like 1 month, or maybe it
Oh
was
my
two
God.
months after that. After I just, it wasn't even that I was working on one business then, and that helped that I was working on one business. But yeah, like you said, I had all these things in my head of like things I knew that I could easily do that would improve the business. It was like, I'm gonna do this thing, this thing. And I remember I just executed for like 3 weeks or something like that. And just, it was like fun. It was really, really fun. And it was like, you hopped out of bed in the morning. It's kind of fun.
Do you remember any specific things you did to check off in that time period that made the most impact?
Yeah, I just started charging more money for for Starter Story. We put that's when we made our paywall, which was like kind of like New York Times paywall, where you can only read 3 articles per month. We basically said, um, start charging for the content, start charging more. We increased our prices, and we started really working hard on selling again. Just, it sounds so obvious now, but like the big thing was like just letting people know that there was something that they could buy, because we obviously have a free blog and that sort of thing. So it's just like being like on every newsletter and working hard in the newsletters, and being like, yeah, you can buy our membership, you can buy our premium membership, which is like, before I was scared to sell stuff because I was worried that people were going to, be like, why do I have to pay for this? A lot of people don't like to pay, especially if it was originally free. So I think it was, just a lot of mindset and focus.
Yeah. Interesting. Because, I just spoke about how I have more momentum and I'm more clear focused than ever, but you talking about that, like, oh, like I do have issues that could be solved, and it triggered some things, and I was like, wow, like, okay, maybe I should do this, because it's like when you have the momentum, you feel like you don't want to stop it, but there also are problems and issues that you're dealing with that you might be tucking under the rug of your own mind, and so I think it's worth considering.
Yeah, I think momentum is like an interesting thing too. Is like, I definitely go through phases of having a lot of energy and then not having, like, being kind of, not super stoked to work on the business for certain weeks. And I think that's super normal. I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs who say that's super normal. I don't know if you experienced that, like going through waves almost.
Definitely. Naval talks about this, where you should be like a lion instead of a cow. Like how the 9 to 5 work is almost like being a cow, like going slow, eating grass in the same place in the same time. And a lion will spurt for one meal, get everything they need for a week or a month, and come back. And I find that I do podcasts the same way. It's like record 10 in 1 week. I could, and it's like, wow, like that's all the month's worth of work. But I don't know. Like, how do you think about it?
Yeah, no, I think that's really cool. Like running a bootstrap business, we don't have, like, we have more time to figure. It's a longer journey to build something great, but we have more time to just try different things. And again, like you say, like, be like a lion sometimes, and then sometimes be like a cow. Like, for example, for some months we'll work on this, we'll go all in on this, certain thing, which is like maybe more advertising, or we'll go all in on like improving a few of the processes of the business. We'll go all in on trying TikTok or something like that, which I find really fun, because I can't do the same thing every day or every week, kind of like the cow analogy. I love to go deep on something and figure it out, and then figure out how we can like make it consistent, and then backing out of that and then going deep on something else. And then also just being able to just take a couple weeks off, or just to, kind of let it roll for a few weeks. So I think that's what's really cool about building, building a podcast like you, or being a creator, or building a bootstrap business is that you don't have to be a lion. Like if you run a VC business and you have, a bunch of funding, you have to go really, really fast, and you can't like let certain parts of the business coast. You can't let anything coast. I don't have any experience doing that, but I imagine that it's not as rewarding as being able to like kind of pick and choose what you want to do. And that's something that I enjoy. Yeah.
Are there any particular ways you go about managing or knowing what energy phase you're in? Like sometimes you could be very energetic and other times not, but like how do you know the difference? Is it always obvious to you?
To me, I think it's pretty obvious usually. Sometimes I'll not have the energy and I'll really try to force it, and sometimes it will take me even a couple weeks to be like, okay, stop forcing it, stop figuring out, or stop trying to, make something like, stop trying to force it. But when I have it, it's no problem. It's like, so it's usually figuring out when you don't have it or being okay with not having it. That's something that always takes me probably a week or two to fully like accept each time.
Like waking up early and being okay with you sleeping in a little bit, right?
Yeah. No, that's that one took me a couple weeks.
A couple weeks. Wow. Yeah. Are there any other examples like that?
I think it's just like having like a task on your to-do list that's been sitting there for a really long time, and then realizing that you're not getting it done because you don't have that energy, and it's probably something that you don't really want to do very much. So that's usually a good sign that you should just probably remove it and then push it off to when you do have more energy. I would say something like that.
Something I really like from George Mack, who's a great follow on Twitter, is he breaks down. So let's say there's a task you really don't want to do. He breaks that task down into levels because we're more inclined to do things that are fun and are like a video game. Oh, like, okay, so let's say the task is build a website and you really don't want to build a website. And let's say you can't delegate it. Well, he would say, okay, level 1 is go to a domain provider. Level 2 is, check the domains that you would like. Level 3 is this, and that. And then you could look and figure out which part of that process you actually don't like to do. And that's helpful for self-awareness, helpful for helping you know you better. And so I like that idea of just breaking things down into levels.
Yep. No, it's just like if you want to start going to the gym, the first step is like just put your shoes on and then that's it. Don't do anything else. And then the second step is put your shoes on and go or for me, it's walking to the gym and then just open the door and then walk out. I do that. Breaking that. I like the level thing though, because that makes it more fun. But I do try to break things down into smaller tasks. Yeah, I think that really helps too. Micro tasks. Yeah,
definitely. Well, Pat, this has been a bunch of fun. I'm incredibly grateful for you for taking the time today. Like I said, you're one of my favorite writers, and you just seem like a really good dude. From meeting you twice online and from reading your stuff for so long. So I'm really grateful, really appreciative. Looking forward to one day, hopefully doing this podcast in person. So maybe we could make that happen sometime in 2022 or 23.
Love that.
And
are you still out in New York?
Yeah, New York at this present moment. But
okay, cool.
Starting to record podcasts in person in Austin and maybe LA this next month. So super excited for that.
Sweet. We'll have to connect. I might be out in LA sometime soon. So
nice. Well, where can we send people to connect with you further?
If you want to see the daily blog, which I'm going to start getting back to, patwalls.com. And search Pat Walls on Google, you find or Pat Walls, and you can find my Twitter on Google. And then also my business that I run is starterstory.com, STARTER story.com. If you're looking to start a business and want to learn from others. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Had a great time.
Likewise.